Welcome, everybody, to tonight's meeting. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I will lead us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do I hear an adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So everybody knows Larry is joining us on Zoom this evening. Welcome, Larry. And not that we don't like Tracy, he's just kind of by himself tonight. So how you doing over there?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Tracy,
You can come over if you want to get
We
closer.
don't bite.
So
Thank you very much.
with that, I've asked Deputy Mayor French to read a proclamation for us this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It'd be my pleasure. Proclamation, Puget Sound starts here month. Let me make sure my mic is appropriately adjusted here. Whereas we resolve to protect Puget Sound and its tributaries, which are the source of our community's well-being, health and economy and quality of life. And whereas we acknowledge that we are on the land of the Coast Salish people of the water who have stewarded this land from time immemorial. And whereas a healthy and vibrant Puget Sound defines our Northwest culture, as do our Indigenous people stories, our tribal treaty responsibilities, and our shared legacy for future generations. And whereas the health of Puget Sound is declining, and creatures and plants, great and small, from our bull kelp forests and salmon to our orcas and shellfish and creatures are at risk from the human impacts of stormwater runoff, loss of natural habitats, and a changing climate. And whereas we all have the power to protect our Puget Sound treasure, work together to discover and take clean water actions through the Puget Sound Starts Here campaign. And whereas in the month of September, the City of Lake Forest Park will join with other governing bodies, organizations, and community groups to strengthen stewardship of our shared watershed and to encourage all to take action to improve the health of Puget Sound. Now, therefore, the Mayor and City of Lake Forest Park do hereby proclaim September 2021 as Puget Sound Starts Here Month in the City of Lake Forest Park and urge all residents to support clean water and healthy habitat by joining us in this special observance and discover how to make a difference and be part of the solution. Witness this thereof, sign this 8th day of, can't say witness thereof, September 2022, Mayor Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. And if you've ever walked around Lake Forest Park, you know Puget Sound starts about on every intersection where they have the grates. And I don't know who decided to do that. That was a great idea when they did that, though. So with that, we'll move on to a public hearing. Public hearing on Ordinance 1248, renewing interim development regulation as authorized by the Growth Management Act relating to indoor emergency shelter and housing, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing. Our city planner, Mr. Bennett, is with us tonight. Steve, Tracy was mentioning that he would miss the first 2 touches on this, so go ahead and talk to me. He might have a couple questions for you.
Okay, sure. Am I on effectively?
Yeah.
Can't tell with this button here.
You might raise it up a little bit, so Larry's having a little tough time hearing us a little bit. So.
Okay, I'll try to lean into it a little bit.
I can hear you just fine,
Oh.
thanks.
No, on the
No,
side,
there's
a
this little button.
left-hand side.
Other side.
Oh, electric. I think that's it. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members, staff. This ordinance would renew the interim regulations that the council adopted in September of last year, which is necessary because we are still waiting for the Department of Commerce, the State Department of Commerce, to provide the city with the necessary guidance related to the numbers and locations and intensity of potential occupants or the capacity needed in Lake Forest Park to for emergency housing and shelter. So the point of this interim regulation was to address the legislation that was adopted by the state that same the summer or the legislative period of 2021, and these regulations went into effect in respectively in July and September of that year. And they essentially said that the city cannot prohibit indoor shelters, emergency shelters, or indoor emergency housing in any zone which allows hotels. And they also, the other legislation said that the city should not prohibit transitional housing or permanent supportive housing in any zone that allows residential dwelling units or hotels. So essentially what the council ended up adopting was something that allowed those the emergency shelters a little bit more intensive use, and that's why it was just we had to allow where hotels were. Council ended up adopting something that essentially allowed it in the corridor commercial zone, and for the permanent housing and transitional housing, those were allowed in all the residential zones, or all the zones that allowed residential units. So that's all the single family zones, plus all of the Southern Gateway zones, and yeah, and all the multifamily zones, all those single family zones, and all the Southern Gateway zones. So the ordinance also created a definition for all those terms, and with those definitions, in addition to those definitions, the regulations establish limits on use for both types of uses. So related to on-site supervision, emergency, that they have to be at certain distances from transit, have to be certain distances from each other, the same type of facility. And in the corridor commercial zone for more intensive emergency shelter, it sets a limitation of housing up to 15 residents. In the residential zones, it essentially says, you can have those, but they have to meet all the other provisions of the residential zone. So if it's in a single family zone, you've got all the yard setbacks, you got the maximum height and the bulk standards. It can only cover whatever 35% of the lot. So that helps keep it in character with the the zoning. And of course, be a little more relaxed in the multifamily zones or the Southern Gateway zones, which allow mixed, allow mixed use. And so this would extend these regulations until March of next year. So I think we have a date specific considering for that. And I think that's what I was thinking of saying. So any questions from the council?
Any questions? Yeah.
Hi, thanks for the brief summary of the history of this. Just wondering if there's a map that shows basically which of the areas you mentioned, Southern Gateway and places like that. Is there I was looking in the packet, but I didn't see kind of where it would be.
Yeah, the basic the map is really limited for, and we can pull that up again. We had it in previous presentations, but it's essentially there's a sliver of corridor commercial across 522 from town center, and then there's the other piece is about a third of an acre piece on Ballinger Way, right there where the heating and ductwork business is located. So that's really the extent of it. And then of course, for the other provisions, it's basically everything that allows residential. So it pretty much covers all the city now, except well, town center possibly. So that's helpful, but we can get you a copy of that map if you like to see.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council? That's it, Larry. I do not see his hand. So with that, I guess we'll open it up to public hearing comments. Do we have anybody signed up? I do not think we have anybody out there. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
If there's anybody on Zoom that wants to address the council, please use the raise hand function. Doesn't look like it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, I'll close the comment section and then we don't have anything to address there, so where would we go from there? 12:48.
Mr. Bennett, we're looking for action tonight, if I'm not
I
incorrect.
think we do need action
renew it?
tonight because
Yeah, I
it will
thought it
expire
was.
before the
Okay.
next council meeting.
I'd like to go ahead and move ordinance 1248.
Second.
And with my colleagues' indulgence, my practice has been in the past, and I thank our excellent attorney, Ms. Adams Pratt, for recognizing this. When we have an ordinance that written with a 6-month timeframe, putting a specific date into it is much more palatable to us and to the public, I think, and I thank her for bringing this to our attention. I'd like to move to amend Section 3, the effective duration of renewed interim development regulations. The only change basically says in effect until March 18th, 2023, which is a period of 6 months from the date of this ordinance is effective and shall automatically expire unless the same is extended, same language moving forward. Just for clarification, so there's no question about the time frame.
I would second that amendment.
Thank you very much.
So it's moved in second, and then it's been changed to a specific date would be the way to put that.
That's correct,
And
yes.
that's been seconded. Do we have any other discussion? So first, I guess I need to vote on the amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment, putting a specific date, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Pass unanimously. And with that, yes, go ahead.
So that made me think, when is the effective date of the expiration of the current?
Would you like to address that?
September 22nd.
September 22nd. Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of ordinance 1248, renewing interim development regulation as amended, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Kim.
Okay. Now we'll move on to the mayor's budget. Thank you, council. Bear with me. This is probably the longest budget message I know I've had to read. We have a lot to cover. So here we go. As we continue our recovery from the ongoing pandemic, a glaring deficiency is the city's continued disparity between revenues and expenditures. With a July to July inflation rate between 9.5 and 10.1% and a property tax cap of 1% annually, the city's mission to provide exemplary service to the residents becomes increasingly difficult each biennium. Thanks to a dedicated staff that rejects the use of the use it or lose it mentality and the benefit of some one-time and ARPA funds, I am able to present to you a balanced budget that does not rely on reserves. Each biennium, we are faced with ongoing expenditures exceeding ongoing revenues. This biennium is no different, and with the rate of inflation, this delta continues to increase. This budget represents ongoing expenditures exceeding ongoing revenues by 1.211.533. So $1,211,533. As with past budgets, that to the staff cost contains efforts and another one-time revenue bump, which in 1920 biennium was building permits, and in 21-22 biennium was school zone speed enforcement. We are able to cover the ongoing expenditures with those one-time revenues. Although we have yet again pulled the proverbial rabbit out of the budget hat, we must identify new, reliable revenue sources moving forward if we are to close this gap, provide the service our residents deserve, and provide them with the new and expanded services they desire. How we approach this must be tempered with the effect on ratepayers, not only from the city perspective, but the one of a region. All governmental entities are feeling the sting of inflation and the effects of the 1% property tax cap. And for these reasons are looking for either new or increased sources of revenue. The majority of funds in the city have needs beyond available revenue and will not be able to solve And we will not be able to solve this in one biennium. But we must begin to avoid falling further behind revenues. Revenues must build over time to address the long-term needs of the city and avoid large increases in any given year. We must begin closing the gap in the general fund and increasing revenues in the capital funds to provide for ongoing operations and ability to finance necessary capital projects. With an unemployment rate of 3.9%, February 2020 to June 2022, lower than any other time in the past 20 years, and the ever-increasing cost of living in the region, it's increasingly difficult to attract and retain talented employees. The impacts are felt in the loss of institutional knowledge and the strain on the employees as we work to fill those positions. Of note, the maintenance worker position in Public Works has been open now for 3 years. The project manager position 3 months with no applicants, and we are just beginning the journey to hire a new assistant planner and arborist. Due to the already lean nature of our workforce, this only further complicates the delivery of the projects and the maintenance of assets. While we work to fill these positions, there will be limited resources to provide current levels of service, let alone take on new projects and tasks. You recall during your retreat, we introduced several options for new revenue increases, user fees in storm and sewer funds, new utility taxes in those same funds, fee and sales tax options through our Transportation Benefits District, TBD, and a voter-approved annual property tax increase based on the Consumer Price Index CPI to support general fund operations. How we put these together to address the priorities of the council will be the challenge we face in this and bienniums to come. I'd like future mayors and council members to look back on this council and administration as the team who put together the financial strategy that moved the city forward. The attached table, page 7, represents the budget enhancement request from each department for this next biennium. In the one-time and ongoing categories, the items included in this proposal budget are proposed to be funded as noted in the ongoing category. There are 5 necessary items included in this budget that, as part of our financial strategy discussions, will add to our ongoing general fund revenue needs. Those are radar expansion as part of our commitment to an evolving policing model and an ever-growing mental and substance use disorders in our region. This is a proven model for a much-needed service. In the first 2 biennium, it is recommended that the ARPA funds be utilized to support this effort. An accountant FTE of 0.4 increase as a result of our most recent audit. The State Auditor's Office, SAO, has directed that the accounting function of the municipal court must have increased oversight and involvement from the finance department. While this necessitates the need for increasing the FTE count in the finance department, it will relieve the court of many of these duties, allowing them to focus on their core mission. Pro tem judge pay increase. This wage has remained static for numerous years and needs to be increased to address inflation and ensure the court is able to attract a backup for our judge. Increased arborist hours. There is a recognized need to increase the hours of this position to allow for time beyond permitting and code enforcement to ensure compliance with landscape and tree replacement plans, as well as conducting inventory assessment. This increase could be supported by tree fund, that can be supported by the tree fund account through this biennium. Bidirectional amplifier with the implement of the new dispatch radio system. This piece of equipment is necessary to provide radio service with City Hall and has an ongoing maintenance fee. On the other hand, I'm very excited to include in this proposed budget funding for equipment and programs that will move the city forward in addressing climate change, which includes, we have included the first electric vehicle and public works fleet, beginning the conversation of public works tools from gasoline powered to electric, and some financial support for the Climate Action Committee. The staff and I look forward to working with the council, tackling the challenge of this budget and helping to realize your priorities. While we won't be able to address all the needs and priorities in the biome, we can set the city on a path to a more financial stable future. When you look to the success of communities, they were not accomplished in short order, but through planning and perseverance. Remember, you have to motivate yourself with challenges. That's how you know you're still alive. Jerry Seinfeld, kind of one of my idols. On a personal note, thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, staff. This has been the most challenging budget I've been through in this is my fourth one, I believe. But I am and I said that earlier today, I think I'm surrounded by the most amazing council, and we are hoping to work with you because we all know we have to make changes to make the city move forward. And we look forward, the staff looks forward to working with you. And with that, Phil's got a few words to say, but I'm going to turn it over to you guys to take it from there. Thank you.
I just have a short presentation. You've got the budgets before you. I just want to kind of give you a quick overview, walk you through how this was put together, how the one-time and ongoing costs roll into this, how it affects the ARPA funds that we have. I want you to think of this presentation as a jacket to a book. You get to read the inside cover and the back and get all excited, but you don't get to really dive into it tonight. Ask questions, because a lot of your questions will begin getting answered on Monday of next week. So we've got department presentations Monday and Thursday of next week, where each department will dive into the details of what we're just going to look at from a 30,000-foot level tonight. So bear with me. I will keep this short because we got a lot to do still. So mayor's budget one-time costs. You'll find this in your budget book. You'll find the whole spreadsheet at the back of your letter. I will send this presentation out to you so you have it. It's a little easier to read than what's in the budget. But in the one-time, these are requests that came from the departments, and this is how we have funded them in the proposed budget. We've talked about the radar program and the expansion of that we're working with the 5 jurisdictions. That comes with one-time cost to the city of Lake Forest Park for $23,000. If you see it highlighted, it's a fund other than general fund that is paying for it. So you'll see how this walks through. External defibrillators. They're old, they're worn out. It's time for new ones. We put $12,000 towards that out of the general fund. However, that's something we likely can get grants for, but it's something we've got to fund, and then we can go chase that. The bi-directional amplifier for the police department. This is as we're moving over to the new radio systems. Not going to get service inside the building, and you can't have your emergency responders not getting service over the radio. So think of it as a booster like you have at home for your cell phone. This is what that does. PD locker room remodel, 22, 23-year-old building. PD locker rooms take a lot of use. And so it's time to take care of that. That's through another fund. Parks master plan and initial execution. This would be funded through a grant it's part of the original lakefront process and property purchase, and CFT having some additional funds that we have on your agenda. So accepting those dollars, we can plug in the $350,000 for that effort. Obviously, that puts us into going out for bid, et cetera, next year. $75,000 for parking lot repaving at Public Works. If you've been out there, you've seen the problems. Climate Action Committee. Mayor's budget puts $30,000 in for professional services. We don't know exactly what that will mean. We've had some requests to date by the committee for some materials and things. And so we'd like to be able to track that within a line item that is tied to that committee. CCTV crawler. This is to go out and send the TV down the sewer lines and the storm drain lines and look for issues. Bring that internal instead of always having to borrow those types of services. Digitizing plans. This is for the Public Works Department. Large format plans. We have limited storage. Everything nowadays is going electronic, but you have to pass where you need to fill those gaps and get those electronic. So this would be just to take those to an outside provider to have those scanned in. Electronic and handheld tool and equipment conversion in Public Works at $65,000, self-explanatory. Surface water master plan. This is another one that's funded outside of the general fund. You'll see the asterisk there on that. It has a value of $200,000. That asterisk is, you'll see later on, we're proposing a proviso as part of this budget. In the past budget, we did a proviso based on, we didn't know where money was going to come from in COVID. And so if we could afford it, we added it to mid-buy. This time around, we don't have the staff. We know we need to do these. We've got them funded. They're part of the budget, but we don't want to put them in the CIP until we can, until we can promise delivery on them. So move that into a proviso. And then Laserfish at 31.4 would just move the courts forward into, this century as far as getting their paperwork done. So see just over $1 million in one-time requests. Ongoing costs, the mayor's covered these, but you see the 161,000 in the radar expansion. Remember, these are biennial numbers, so you can divide these in half for a year. 0.4 FTE increase for the accountant position. Pro tem judge at 4,000 increase arborist hours, 24.5, so it's 12,250 a year. WCIA insurance increase, we alluded to this in the past, that this was coming. This represents about a 43% increase to our liability insurance. A lot of that has to do with a lot of state laws that have changed. A lot of providers have pulled out of the state. WCIA is left with fewer providers to get those services. Hence, as you know, costs go up. And then they've also had just a lot of cash going out through the pool. And just that reference there, 78% of that is general fund related. Bidirectional amplifier, obviously, if we need an antenna, we need the maintenance fees on that, and same with Laserfish. So we have $473,000 in one-time requests. So you're wondering how all this works. So this is the general fund. This is what you have. This is where we're starting. We have 1,847,329 in a 21-22 surplus. Now this is today. This number can fluctuate between now and the end of the year. We always are trying to fluctuate it up, not down. So that's your surplus in the general fund. We have $1,211,533 shortfall between revenues and expenditures. So then we plug in 95,000 from lost revenue. This is based off a calculation the finance department did. So now you have a balance of $730,796. Then you have your one-time requests. Everything in green in those one-time requests, those are from separate funds. So we have CFT that takes care of the parks. We're using ARPA for radar. The sewer fund will pay for the CCTV crawler. And then the 303 funds take care of the parking and the PD locker. So it leaves you, when you offset that, a balance of 317,398, or is that 396? And then we enter our ongoing requests of $473,000. We plug back in 161,000 for radar out of ARPA, as well as the 200,000 out of ARPA for the surface water master plan. The mayor requested that we had a balance would have been 241,916 to put 200,000 towards street improvements. We have our TBD of roughly $800,000 for overlays. We've heard, through speaking with you, there's a desire to do, as much as we can in those projects. And so we think that one of the best ways to approach that is to put some additional funding, 200,000 into street improvements. And through these meetings, we'll discuss what that means for the council. Leaves you a general fund balance of just under $42,000. So we didn't spend it all, but we came pretty close. But I think what you'll recognize is we listened to the priorities of the council. We got the Climate Action Committee, funded. We got, we're starting to move. We've got a fleet vehicle that would come into Public Works that's electric, moving Public Works towards their battery operated equipment. And so we've tried to address as many goals as we could in presenting this to you. I'm sure there are others that we'll talk about during this process. So how does this affect ARPA? So at the end of this year, you have 2,368,700 in there. We take out 95,000 for lost revenue, gives you your balance of 273,700. We take out the 184 for radar. The recommendation in the mayor's budget is to replenish the fleet/IT fund and the street fund. We underfunded these during COVID. We funded them at about 50%. That causes us major problems because this equipment, it doesn't wait for COVID. It's still going to have to be replaced on a schedule. And so the recommendation, the reason it's highlighted in that color, this wasn't just, no individual department asked for this. We just thought this was a good idea. Good financial policy. Surface water master plan comes out at 200,000. The ARPA management, that is, we've spoken to you about this before, in that instead of hiring somebody to come in and run ARPA for it, we're just reimbursing the city for the time that myself, the finance director, and the city attorney spend on getting these contracts put together. And then you have the 300,000 that you have set aside for small businesses, which we've begun allocating. And so at the end of this biennium, you have 870,700 less left in your ARPA fund balance. These are the three unfunded requests that were in the budget. And as you can see, they have a very large total. Couldn't put such ongoing requests into a budget. It's already $1.2 million in the whole revenues to expenditures. So that's a traffic officer, clerk, and a GIS specialist. The departments will talk to you next week about why those were in their budget requests and what benefit they see to the departments and to the city for those. And so this walks into what's in the back of the mayor's letter. You can see everything crosses over. And so that's just, we don't need to dwell on that. So the proposed proviso that I mentioned. So we have the sewer master plan that we would like to complete within this biennium at a $360,000 value. That is funded by the sewer capital. We have the surface water master plan that would be funded through ARPA. Is just, this is a staffing issue. We currently have one project manager. And so we can't, with all the projects that we have going now, we can't add this on top. We just don't have the capacity. So we'd like to put this in to a proviso. Anything else that comes out through the budget process from the council that either we don't have the staffing or we may not have the dollars right now. This is what we did during COVID. We look at this during the mid-buy during 2023. And if we've hired people, how we can add these back in, amend the CIP at that point in time and throw those projects in there. Rate increases. So there are two proposed rate increases built into this budget. I know the first one will jump out at you at 10% in 23 and 24 for the surface water. In the 1920 biennium budget, there was a 10% increase in 19. We took it all in 1 year, not in the second year. We did not take any increases in any of the funds in the 21-22 budget because of COVID. And this budget's hemorrhaging basically. And so we need to start bringing it up. This may be too much all at once. Kind of goes back to the mayor's letter. We've got to start the plan now to make sure these are funded. The sewer, it just puts in 3%, kind of that assumed long-term CPI to keep that one in check. And then the one you don't have control over is King County Sewer. In both years will go up 5.75%. So those are the only rate increases that have been built into this budget. We can have a discussion on, if we do something different in those, how that kind of affects the fund, what type of fund balance, say in the surface water, we would expend to keep that operational. New revenue options. We won't spend a lot of time here because this is exactly what you saw back at your council retreat. I just wanted to get it back on top for you, and I will send this out, this entire presentation out, so you'll have it as well. You see your options in transportation benefit district and the revenue that generates and the restrictions, where it's restricted to. Same with your utility taxes that we talked about back then. Their values, you see they're unrestricted. Technology fee, our current fee is about 5%, but we're using more and more technology as time goes on. So there's a potential way to kind of offset some of those costs that we've been incurring. And then your last one that we discussed, I think briefly at the council retreat, Shoreline has this in place, is a property tax levy. It's a voter approved and it follows CPI. And the way it works for Shoreline is that their council can take up to CPI in any given year. And it takes a vote of the council and they make that decision at that time. Talk to the city manager from Shoreline, and then this year they did take the full 5.5%, but the council could have chosen to take 3% of that. So everything above there is councilmanic. It's just, it's a vote of this body. So your budget schedule. So this was the hurdle that we're happy to be over. We're all clapping and excited to present this to you.
Well done,
It's
team.
been a long haul and a lot of late nights, weekends, sleepless nights. But we're not done yet. So we have department presentations next week, the 22nd. We go over the revenue projections and you can follow this out. But the 26th is when council is scheduled to begin deliberations. And that's just about every meeting that you will have between now and mid-November. We'll be talking budget. So that's the presentation. I hope that I've piqued your interest and you're excited and you'll come back on Monday and hear from the departments and walk through everything and enjoy your reading over the weekend. Need 30,000 square foot. Wow, I'm back on the building side. 30,000 foot questions you have before I sit down.
Yes, Councilmember Riddle.
Just briefly, I think that CPI property tax, that was kind of new to me. So if there's any additional information that we can get about how that's structured, that's just a new concept to me. So if I could
All right.
get something later,
Yeah, we can get you a little more detail.
a
on
little
that.
blurb. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Just
Deputy
a-
Mayor.
Just a quick comment. I wanted to thank the administration and staff for being extraordinarily forthcoming about everything that's been coming down the pike. I think this budget season is going to be one where we fully recognize that there are difficult choices to be made. It's a very lean budget. It's a very responsible budget. And there is no place for us to go in terms of cutting. There just is not. And I want to head that off at the pass before some miscreants in the community jump on us and say that this is, a challenge. I think that from my perspective, the administration has been incredibly effusive and forthcoming about what is coming. And what I see reflected in this budget is exactly that. And I thank the mayor and Phil and Lindsay and staff for being very straightforward about it. And our difficult task as policymakers is to decide what the sort of nice to haves are going forward. And I am extraordinarily pleased to see the administration's commitment to the environment. Thank you, Mayor and staff, for making commitments to changing things in public works and to the Climate Action Committee. I know Councilmember Reports would be very pleased about that as well. So again, not the place to go on too long, but in the coming weeks, we have some conversations to have about things that we would like to do. The things that we need, I think, are really reflected in this budget. And I hope we have a really robust conversation about it. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing, how about you, Larry? You have anything? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Phil, very much. Thank you again, Lindsay and staff. Thank you always, Kim, just I'm not going to leave you out, so. And with that, we're going to move on to citizens' comments. I see nobody out here. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
If you want to address the council, please use the raise hand function. We do have one, or I thought we did, but. Okay, Julian Anderson wants to address.
Okay, welcome, Julian.
Very good, thank you. I have nothing planned. I just wanted to react to the budget message and my desire to have the whole package in my hands. When will that be possible? It would be my question. And I believe included is more arborist hours, hopefully to 100%. And I think that's very significant and very much appreciated. That's all. Get me all the stuff.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Actually, Phil's going to answer your question for you.
So Julian, we have printed copies here tonight. We'll leave them at the front desk if you want to swing by and get a copy, and the electronic version will be up on the website tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Anybody else?
I believe that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so at this time, we are going to close citizens' comments. Thank you. And at this time, Diego, go home, please. You've been here since 6 o'clock. I'm gonna kick you out of here. Don't put up too much of a fight, okay? Good night, buddy. Thank you. Okay, with that, we're gonna move on the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved in second. All those in favor of the consent calendar, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, passes unanimously. With that, we're going to go on to ordinance and resolution for introduction and referral. Lindsay, this is on ordinance 1249, amending chapter 13.08 of the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code Sewer Service and Usage regarding rates. Use regarding rates.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just had to try out our new toy. So this ordinance is what we consider internally as like a housekeeping item. It came forward when we started reviewing the budget items that needed to come through for the legislative side. And our new clerk went through and identified that the way we have it structured to adopt our sanitary sewer rates is listed in our code through the city's biennial budget document. Historically, we have always broken it out and done it by ordinance, actually, instead of resolution. But we're requesting through this revision is to amend the ordinance and do it by resolution, which is how the city normally adopts any type of rate increase, and it's not included in the code. And it is desired to be broken out and be a little more transparent than just being adopted through a budget document where it's just holistically included. So we would like to still allow that it's more transparent in its own resolution. And so that's what's being brought forward and proposed prior to going into all of the legislation items with all of the budget, the list of budget items that will be coming forward in the very near future. And that concludes my brief overview. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Lindsay. Can you please raise that for the next person coming up?
Oh,
I'm on a roll tonight. I'm just joking. Golly. Okay, we have no questions. So from that, we're going to move on to ordinance and resolutions for action. We have resolution 1854 authorizing the mayor to execute the Distributors Washington settlement participator form related to the nationwide opioid litigation, and resolution 1855 authorized the mayor to execute the allocation agreement related to the allocation of the use of opioid litigation settlement proceeds between the state and the eligible cities and counties. I used up all my talking there, so. Bill.
Thank you, Mayor. And I,
You don't look like Kim.
what's that?
Well, I was said it was our city attorney was going to be talking this, and you don't look like her.
Well, the agenda cover has my name. So
Well, then our,
it's Matt's fault. We'll blame
yeah, it
Matt.
is. Not lying.
Well, I appreciate you introducing them both because I was going to cover them both at the same
Okay.
time. So before you tonight are resolutions 1854 and 1855, which seek council authorization for the mayor to execute the Distributors Washington Settlement Participation Form and the allocation agreement related to the allocation and use of opioid litigation settlement proceeds between the state and eligible cities and counties. We are one of those. The state of Washington has now reached a settlement with the opioid distributors for up to $518 million, with more than $476 million to be directed toward addressing the opioid epidemic, paid over 17-year period starting this December 2022. The opioid distributor settlement includes 3 separate agreements. One is a participation form. This form is needed for the Distributors Washington settlement to be finalized. The other one is the One Washington MOU. memorandum of understanding between the Washington municipalities, which the city council approved pursuant to resolution 1845. And then the allocation agreement, which covers the split between the state and local jurisdictions, which is a 50-50 split. Washington cities and counties with populations over 10,000 can join this settlement. And if a sufficient number join, they will receive up to $250 million that must be spent on efforts to combat the opioid epidemic. 116 cities out of the 125 eligible cities must sign the participation form by September 23rd, or the settlement agreement will be void and no funds will be received by the state or the cities. Similar agreements have been reached in almost every other state, and no other state and their local governments have decided not to approve the national settlement. Execution of the participation form would have no negative impact on the city's budget and would ensure that the state is able to meet the participation threshold to effectuate the settlement of the opioid distributors. The city's additional execution of the related One Washington MOU and allocation agreement will guarantee that the city receives a portion of the settlement proceeds from the opioid distributors. However, we have no idea what that will be. We'll just have to wait and see how that all falls out. What we're requesting tonight is that resolutions 1854 and 1855 are adopted to authorize the mayor to execute the distributors Washington settlement participation form and allocation agreement related to the allocation use of opioid litigation settlement proceeds between the state and eligible cities and counties. If you have deep questions, this is where Kim comes in.
Any questions for Kim at this time? Okay, seeing none. Would anybody like to move these resolutions?
I'd like to move the adoption of Resolution 1854, authorizing the mayor to execute the Distributors Washington Settlement Participation Form related to the nationwide opioid litigation.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of resolution 1854, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Since you all said aye, and I'm abstaining, sent passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Would anybody like to move resolution 1855?
I'd like to move Resolution 1855, authorizing the mayor to execute the allocation agreement related to the allocation and use of opioid litigation settlement proceeds between the state and eligible cities and counties.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of resolution 1855, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, council. That was pretty much a win-win situation. Resolution 1856, authorizing the mayor to sign an amendment to the Conservation Futures Interlocal Cooperation Agreement between King County and the City of Lake Forest Park for open space acquisition projects. Hey, Phil, is Corey on Zoom? Oh, there she is. She's been hiding there all night.
Hi, Corey.
Hi, Corey, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Take it away.
Yeah, so we have the amendment to the agreement we signed last year, allocating another $625,000 because an appraisal came in much higher than the original we did. So King County Council already passed the funding, then this would just approve funding going to us.
That's got a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to add one thing to this, to the mechanics of this. So the $625,000, when we receive it, will be going into the Strategic Opportunity Fund. This is the same fund that we used to purchase the lakefront property, the original $500,000 that we put into it. And then the $350,000 that I showed you in the budget tonight would be then allocated out of that. You'll see that in your budget documents for those purposes. And then the remainder would stay there until we either bring you another project or the council identifies another strategic opportunity to put those funds towards. So.
Yes. Deputy Mayor, Councilmember Bodie.
Would I answer to anything? Thank you very much. I think this is just very exciting news, and I know we've been awaiting this moving along and to be able to move ahead. And first of all, I applaud the initiative of our team, our staff, to actually get this grant for us and have this amendment to our agreement. But then the work to be done with this is really important to our community and moving forward with the park master plan, including for the lakefront park. I know the Parks Board will be excited to get going on this. So thank you to the staff, though, for making this a reality.
Yes, Deputy Mayor French.
I think Councilmember Bodie covered most of what I was going to say, but I want to applaud the tenacity of staff and the administration for going after these additional funds. And that's a really enormous win for our community because it's tremendously difficult to for us to get grant funding for various recreational and park projects. And this is a real win for the community. So thank you, Mayor and administration.
Yes.
And I wanted to add my thanks to all of you and just the tenacity of 3 years worth of just going after this money. And the community will really benefit from it. And I just wanted to clarify, this money can be used for any of these types of projects, not just the lakefront property.
Yes.
Correct. So this, yeah, basically we're at this point being reimbursed for costs we've already spent. So yeah, this roll right into any of our parks.
Anybody else? Would anybody like to move resolution 1856?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move resolution 1856, authorizing the mayor to sign the amendment to the Conservation Futures Interlocal Cooperation Agreement between King County and the City of Lake Forest Park for open space acquisition projects.
Second.
Been moving second. Do I see any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of resolution 1856, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passing unanimously. And before you go, Corey, give a big hand to our rock star sitting there. You know, everything from Battle of Bands to standing there in the sun all day on market day. I had to laugh. She lives in Edmonds, so she was overdressed for the 80-degree market day, but that's okay. And then looking forward to, we have this weekend picnic in the park, and she's done all the work for it. Corey, you're a rock star, and thank you for everything you do. So, and
Thank you.
have a
Hopefully
nice
we'll see some of you out there Saturday.
Oh, we'll be there.
For sure.
Thank you. Okay, folks, with that, do we have any council discussion or action? Okay, how about any of,
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
is this the appropriate time to move for Councilmember Cassover's excused absence?
no, we are not doing that anymore.
You're not doing
I'm
that
just
anymore? I believe you.
No, that would be just fine.
You beat us all to it.
Okay, I would like to move that the council excuse the absence of council member and deputy chair Cassover.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays?
Nay.
There
Oh,
we
thank
go.
you.
You took over the
I got your
tradition.
back.
Somebody got, thank you.
Yeah.
Somebody had to do it.
Tradition.
I couldn't do it. It's tradition.
Okay, any other business besides excusing people? Seeing none after that, how about any council member reports? Wow. Yes, Councilmember Riddle.
Thank you. I just have a quick report from the North King County Coalition on Homelessness. We got a report from Lake City Partners that does the Oaks Shelter. And they do have a new executive director now, about a month in, so still kind of getting his feet under him. But he was able to kind of give us an update. Right now, the Oaks is consistently at capacity. If there's ever an empty room, it's because it's in turnover. And they usually have about 40 people in what they call their virtual lobby. So it's definitely a high demand shelter in the area. It's the only shelter in the area, but some successes is they've actually been able to get people who've been in the virtual lobby directly into housing. So not even getting them into the shelter first. They've just been really working with the outreach and really making connections. So I find that just worth noting. It's a great program, and it's part of what the Regional Homelessness Authority will be funding. They have a contract with them, and if we were to get into the ILA, it'd be where that our funding would go to that as well. And then we did get an update from the Regional Homelessness Authority. And the piece that I want to highlight for us is there's a voucher program. So usually if you get in contact with a shelter, if you're able to, they give you a voucher, which then allows you to get into reduced cost rentals, usually apartments, for I think a year plus, something around that. And the King County area has about a 76% turnover rate for of folks who got vouchers who actually find housing. And this is really important because the national average is under 50%, and similar large cities like San Francisco are down at about 28%. So our programs actually have started working, and we're actually getting people into housing through these voucher programs. It was a little slow to start, but we're now one of the highest turnover rates of getting people shelter over their heads through this voucher program. So two really great sort of highlights from efforts being made around this region. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councilmember Bodie.
Councilmember Fortani, would you like to go first? Okay. The Planning Commission met, and they're continuing to work on the reasonable use exemption recommendations that they're going to make with our planning director. They've been working with Mr. Bennett. So I anticipate that they'll be continuing to move through that and wrap up fairly soon. And they have, I think, submitted their recommended sign ordinance to us. And so I do encourage us to hear from the chair or one of their representatives on what they did, because it wasn't as simple as they thought. And City Attorney Pratt helped them get enthusiastic about it. So
Simple was
it's
not
all
it.
about the Constitution.
It is.
Indeed.
So, and second, the Parks Board met, and they reviewed the ordinance on the beer garden permits and so forth. And they do have some thoughts about clarifying what the requirements and criteria are for insurance and safety and so forth. And I think Corey did a good job explaining what our policies are, but they're somewhat informal. So they're recommending that we actually take care, because we don't even charge for these permits, by the way. So so that we take care and actually maybe memorialize in some way our process and procedures for this. So there will be a letter coming from the board along those lines, but leaving to us the best way to implement the recommendation. They reviewed the yoga and stretch in the parks program. It was a great success. Every single session had about 35 to 60 people at it, and that was with minimal publicity. So they would like to do it again next year, and do a little bit more promotion, get the dates out a little bit ahead of time. And one suggestion was that the waiver forms, maybe you could just sign it once instead of signing it every single session where you came, to make things a little bit easier. You know, people would like to be able to eventually do it at the lakefront park. Wouldn't that be fun? But Animal Acres was a great location, everyone thought. They're trying to take that model and maybe in the fall do some city walks, you know, where someone would kind of host it, and so people could come and join a group of citizens and take a walk of a selected route. I don't know exactly how they're going to do that. So that's an emerging thought that they want to encourage more recreation and use and awareness of the parks. And then last but not least, there were thanks for the pickleball painting soon to occur. And our pickleball advocate member of the Parks Board has raised almost all the money for the $5,000 needed to get the nets. They're up, last
Awesome.
time they were up to like $4,000 and they had some big benefit purpose that they were gonna raise additional funds. So these aren't flimsy pickleball nets for those of you who like pickleball. These are pretty robust pickleball nets. So that's it for me. Good
Thank you.
news all around.
Councilmember Firotani, then Deputy Mayor French.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to report on the Climate Action Committee's meeting last Tuesday. We interestingly, we were talking about what kind of priorities and concerns the citizens had or the residents had, as well as the businesses regarding climate action. And a survey is going to be coming out. And we hope to roll it out a little bit at the picnic in the park. But we'll have actually an online one that we hope to advertise through the newsletter. And so everyone be on the lookout for that. And we had a visit from Deputy Mayor Kenmore, Melanie O'Kane, who spearheaded her city's efforts in regards to the climate action plan they now have. And that re-energized the committee. There's a lot of advice that she had about what steps especially not to take when you try to put together a climate action plan. And I think that that may actually save us a bit of time. So we really appreciated her comments.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor French.
Yeah, just a quick shout out to the women and men of our PD. I've had the opportunity 3 different times over the last, I guess, about 10 or 12 days to observe them interacting with people in crisis. And I just want to say that our PD is an extraordinary group of people, and they have enormous hearts. They're kind, compassionate, and gosh, you know, anybody who's listening to this out there in the community, give them a big shout out and tell them thank you, because they are just amazing people. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that tonight, because I've observed them dealing with people in crisis that I personally would have had a very difficult time doing. And they did it with grace, compassion, and dignity and respect above all. And I think that's just extraordinary. So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Larry, do you have anything?
I don't, since I was unable to attend Seashore this past week.
Okay.
And the tree board meeting was canceled.
No offense, but you look really tired, buddy. I need to get you out of here. So it's pretty much 11 o'clock where you're at. So with that,
Thanks.
with nobody else, Mayor, remember Picnic in the Park is on Saturday. It's a great way to run around and meet people and stuff. It's pretty exciting. It's our first one back for a while.
It'll be 90 degrees.
Yeah, and at the same time, they're gonna be over there painting the salmon on the bridge. I was told we have about 150 people. And so get over there and see that. That's pretty exciting. So they've got that going on. Corey is in charge of all that too. I'm a little disappointed because they stole my idea. I was actually gonna have yoga with the mayor, but that one, I guess I can't do that now, so.
They wouldn't accept my waiver.
Yeah.
They said I hurt myself.
They said, yeah,
Same thing for
they
you.
made me do a double.
Oh, I don't
waiver.
feel so bad.
You know, it's exciting that we got that stuff. I think
We'll
it's
have to
great.
give you another activity.
Different form.
Yeah.
Tai
Yes.
Chi or something.
Chair
you
yoga.
know.
Or it'd
Chair
be-
yoga.
Be more like cribbage with the mayor. We call it. No, it's exciting that we're.
There you go.
With the mayor.
It's exciting that we're back doing what we're doing and getting everybody together, and thank you for everybody. And like I said, if you make it out, it's a great way to mingle with the people and stuff. And thanks again to the staff and Lindsay, and I'll make it public. Thanks for letting me borrow your truck, Lindsay. That was really nice of you. So sad, but that's the truth. And I hope we have a executive session coming up, and we have Phil's administrator report. Do you have anything to say there?
Nothing more.
And on the executive session, we could probably stay here, I would present.
Pardon me?
We can stay here for the executive
No, we
session.
need to, no, because we'd have to kill this meeting. So we've got to go downstairs
And as I understand it, on point that there will be potential action.
afterwards. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We need 45 minutes.
We need to read the RCW.
Okay. Okay, so with that, we're gonna do executive session regarding potential or continued litigation per RCW 42.30.110/1I, and we need 45 minutes. So we'll be back at exactly. Oh, I'm thinking 8:49.
Optimist.
Okay, see you all downstairs. Larry, you're gonna join us down there or you?
The city council executive session will continue for another 10 minutes.
Folks, welcome back. At this time, I think, Tom, you have a resolution that you'd like to read?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion I'd like to make and present to the council. I would like to move to authorize the mayor to sign the settlement and release agreement between the city of Lake Forest Park and Victoria Pettiross regarding the water trespass and damage dispute between the parties. The settlement and release agreement discharges the city from all claims in exchange for payment to Pettiross of $30,000 and a waiver of up to $10,000 in permit fees related work to stabilize the slope on Pettiross property.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second to approve the Pettiross settlement. Do I have any other discussion at this time? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I have 6 ayes. Any nays? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you. Is that it? Okay. With that, we will adjourn the meeting and go on from there. Thank you. Get out of here.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Night.